Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Selden. I'm president of the Montessori Foundation. We're a nonprofit school consulting group, specializing in Montessori schools, but working with all kinds of schools, public, private, and charter around the world. I see one of my colleagues has just joined, Renee Farkas, Ducheney Farkas, who's one of our senior consultants. And with me as my co-host, Clint Loesch, who is the founder of Ames. And one of the reasons I reached out to Clint and suggested we start doing this is as I came to know him over the last 6 months, I really found a lot of respect for him individually and for his company and his experience. And he used to work for one of my favorite school consulting groups, Independent School Management, and I felt there's a lot of wisdom here. So we wanted to create a small cadre. We run another webcast every week on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We thought we'd start a second one for school leaders, this time focusing on recruiting families, making admissions decisions, dealing with all the issues having to do with tuition setting and pricing and discounting and everything under the sun. And the whole marketing thing, and then the building of community and creating of partnerships. So I think this is now our 7th or 8th session. And let me hand off to you, my friend.
All right, yeah, no, Tim, I appreciate it. And Renee, it's also good to have you on. Renee's been the star of the show the last couple of weeks. So appreciate it and looking forward to having you back on. Yeah, and today, we're going to be talking about kind of one of the most common questions we've been getting recently. There's been a lot of common questions I feel like I start off these sessions with talking about, but as we're getting into admission season, or at least admission event season, um, you know, schools are doing more with social media, they're doing more advertising. And so the question that's always been coming up is how much should I spend on advertising, right? How can we get better results with our social media? How do we reach more people with social media? I was holding a coaching session the other day, and one of the questions came in and was like, hey, we're posting about our events on social media, but they're not performing very well. How do we get them to perform better? How do we get more people to see it? And so we'll talk about that. And one thing I'll put a plug out there because this is something that's been asked of us recently, especially when it comes to marketing, is like, hey, could you just give us a report? Like, how are we doing? Where are we strong? Where are some of the gaps? And through our platform, we actually have a really great we call like an audit or a snapshot report. We can take your school information and we can give you a snapshot of how well is your website performing? How about SEO? What are the keywords that you're ranking for? What are the opportunities there? What are your advertising opportunities? How do you benchmark against your competitors when it comes to SEO and social media and reviews? And so, I'll put this in the chat for anybody that's interested. And I'll mention this at the end. We could talk about it at the end for anybody that wants to hang out. And it's just fill out this form if you want to get an audit report, and we'll build one for you. And then we could share it with you, and you can see exactly where you're strong and maybe some areas for improvement. So that is our new marketing report that we have. So with that being said, as we get into analyzing budget, the other cool, analyzing ad budget and social media, we have a couple of resources that we're going to give to everybody today, which are advertising projections, right? If you're going to spend $500 or $1,000, what are the expectations of what you should get from that? And ultimately, that should lead into how much do we need to spend? It's not so much how much should we spend on ads, how much do you need to spend on ads, right? What's your goal? I was talking with a school the other day, and they said, hey, we need some help with our open house. I said, great. How many do you usually get? We get about 50. Would you like to get 100? Okay, your goal is to get 50 more. Well, what do you need to do, right? What do you need to do to get 50 more registrants? How much is that really going to cost, right? And one of those numbers you might want to jot down is cost per conversion, right? So in this sense, we're talking about a conversion from, and let's just use open house as the example. What's the cost per open house registering? And once you start knowing those, and you may not know those right now, and you're probably only going to know those after you start running your campaigns. But if you focus on that for your next campaign, you can start to see, hey, it costs us $73 to get an open house registrant, as an example. Well, now if you know it's going to cost you $73 to get an open house registrant, now you can start reverse engineering your budget. Hey, if we want 10 more, okay, it's going to cost us $730. If we want 20, right, it's going to cost us $1,400, $1,500. And so that's ultimately the point we want to get to. So we'll talk about that today, as well as, kind of on the flip side is, what about also social media, right? You're everybody's here doing social media to a degree. So how do we make sure we're getting the most bang for I'll say bang for our buck, even social media is free, bang for your time, if I will. If you're going to produce content, what's the content that's actually going to reach prospective families to help you with your social media? Before diving in, I mean, Tim, do you have any thoughts about whether it's events or how much to spend on advertising based on your own experience? Any general rules of thumb that you had?
I do. The first thing is that I find that most private schools don't spend enough money. They don't think they need to. They feel like they get all the applications they need and they're feeling comfortable. And my experience, having worked with all kinds of schools, both as a headmaster and as a consultant and as the son of a headmaster in Washington, D.C., who worked very closely with schools in Philadelphia and Chicago and Boston and New York, I've seen just about anything from a recession to a scandal to, a hurricane comes in and bunch of your families lose their jobs or their homes. Lots of things can happen to cause a school to go into a crisis. So in general, what I would say is your goal is to keep the boiler hot, pressure in the boiler. Think of an old train. You want far more applicants than you can possibly deal with. And you want to increasingly go for the right applicants. I mean, that's my number one point is many people use a shotgun approach. And I think we need to be pinpoint accurate to go after the right people for our individual school so that we're not just selling our gymnasium, our 40-acre campus, our GPAs and our SAT scores. I mean, anyone could do that. You really got to figure out what you're selling, why people would love you versus the free public schools or the other independent schools or faith-based schools. We really have to invest. And without advertising, a terrible thing happens. Nothing. And so, whether you pay for it, or whether you're not paying for it, you're working. Somehow your institution is making an investment in making the phone ring and the inquiries come and keeping people engaged once they're with you. So communicating, building up that sense of engagement, sense of community, getting people to be aware of you, controlling the narrative instead of letting other people tell their friends and neighbors about your school alone. You need to give them words to help them understand how would you explain what your kids' experience is like at that school. And while you can't mold these parents like clay, you can definitely help them to think about what do you believe is going on so that it helps them to put it into words that are more likely to be understood by their mother-in-law or their sister or their colleagues at work.
And I just have a quick question as we're getting into this topic, because there's kind of two topics, right? There's the paid advertising and then there's the organic social media. Just out of curiosity, who's here who wants to really know, hey, how much should we spend on ads? Who's here more focused on organic social media? Just out of curiosity. Feel free to unmute or just type it in the chat.
I'm more about paid ads. I think social media, I think I got a pretty good handle on that.
Okay. And so Sandy, I appreciate you unmuting, and I'll ask a follow-up. Any specific questions when it comes to paid ads? Well, let me ask you this. what type of advertising you're doing with your paid ads? What platforms are you using?
I use mostly I'm Facebook and Insta, and I will occasionally do a LinkedIn ad when they give me free money. I've been like Yelp is trying to get on me, but you have to spend 300 to get 300. And I don't know if I want to go down that path yet. I do digital billboards, regular billboards, print publications and magazines. I sponsor a lot of like local area stuff. We go to almost every school that will let us in the door. Um, Not paid advertising, but I'm just thinking of advertising in general. Uh, you know, I think what helped us the most with our open house this year was the digital billboards that were located. We draw from 4 different states, and it was like front and center and across the line in Pennsylvania as you're going into Delaware, because a lot of people will live in Pennsylvania and work in Delaware. I think that worked out for us because our open house was full to the brim.
Sandy, what school are you with?
I'm in Salesianum School in Wilmington, Delaware. We're an all boys Catholic school.
Not
And
too far.
yeah, and my position's pretty fairly new. I've been here for 4 years, and they didn't have anyone like me. They were kind of more word of mouth because there's a lot of legacy families here, but I'm not. And so I kind of put that view in the stories and the social media because I have a pretty strict like daily posts I make, and then I make additional posts if necessary. So I try to keep my engagement there. So I'm pretty comfortable there. It's just, what else do I need to do? I'm working on, I'm part of niche, but I'm not like a super paid person. I'm just making my page look pretty with as much little as I can do there. Because the only thing I really want is I want emails. I want targeted emails, and I can't buy
Yeah.
them because you have to have a conglomerate to buy them. So we had a marketing company we worked with 1 year and gave them to us, and now I'm finding it difficult to get them. And other than the people that already have an interest in us, our regular inquiries, which we already do admissions emails regularly to them. So I don't know what more I can do, but I was really happy with the digital billboards. And I don't know if there's anything else out there like that I'm missing.
When you say digital billboard, you're talking an electronic billboard in front of the school?
Not in front of the school. Like, there's one near our school, but there's one like, I'd say 15 miles away from us, 20 miles away, that we're pulling from. Oh, and I do Google ads too.
Yeah.
Sandy, can you tell me again what school you're with?
Salesianum. It's
Salesianum.
SALESIANUM.
And did you say you're an ethical culture school?
No, Catholic, all boys Catholic.
Catholic, okay.
Mhm.
So, okay, so that's a brand that's much better known. And so the real issue is, do you have enough population around you, and can you reach them? And how do you reach that market? Who wants to spend money to send their kids to an all-boy Catholic high school, middle school, high school?
High school.
Okay. Fascinating. The issue is, where do they live these days? You're probably already known to the people who are the low-hanging fruit. And what's your competition?
We have we're saturated in Delaware because there are no strong public schools. And even in the public schools across the line, which are a little bit better, it's just the class sizes, the amount of kids going into these high schools is dramatically larger, and our average class size is still 18. So I think that's the pull.
Mm-hmm.
And our competition is the independent schools that are smaller than us, that don't have as many offerings, but they're very prestigious. So their price tag is 35, ours is 20. But what they do is they're salesmen. They will undercut us because they will discount a seat so low because they want the people in their seats. And I worked for a school previously to this, so I know the game. It just, it makes it difficult. And then they do things we can't do. We can't offer athletic scholarships. So that makes it difficult, but some of them kind of skirt around the issue. Because I was at one of those schools. It's just hard. It's competition, it's cutthroat. What makes you unique? What makes you special? Like, how do you get out there? Am I getting into all the places I need to be? I don't know. That's why we're here.
Are there any other schools that are similar to you?
I'd say Archmere is a Catholic school. It's co-ed, and St. Mark's is co-ed,
Mhm.
but very different when you're, dealing with a brotherhood.
Mhm.
In other words, your school is being all male is the more different.
Yeah, I mean, we have sister schools, but I think the way that our boys are, genuine, the way we teach, it's all boys by design, is different than you can do in a co-ed school. Boys learn differently.
And,
Good.
this question is both for you, Sandy, and for everybody here, because I think, Sandy, what you had, what I love that you're doing, by the way, and I think it's um, shouldn't be overlooked, is being in a lot of different places. Something I talk about all the time is being omni-channel and omnipresent, right? It's multiple platforms, placements, being kind of everywhere all the time, right? That's the name of the game these days. Digital, makes it a little bit easier to do that than it used to be. But I love that you're using a lot of those platforms. And so my question for you and for everybody is: has anybody tracked, what is their best performing channel? Whether is it the local publication? Is it Facebook ads? Has anybody done that tracking or been able to do that tracking?
I admit I haven't tracked my open house. I don't have time. I need to find an easy way to do this because I'm one person.
Well, Sandy, you and I will talk afterwards, because that's exactly what our platform does. It'll help you track that. Shameless plug. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But it's something to think about for everybody, regardless of what platform, or if you're using something like our software. You want to be able to kind of go back and say, this platform is producing results at this cost, or just even in general, like, hey, we know we're getting a lot of traffic from niche, right? That's another common one that comes up all the time. Should we pay for niche or not? That's another discussion to have. Does anybody have a good sense of like what their best performing platform has been for an open house, or just getting tours, or just getting interest in general? Good, Phil.
I would just say it's easier to track when it's being tracked for you. So Google Ads, putting it at the top of, at the top of a search for something that's similar to me. So I find that I've done Facebook ads in the past. They generally don't really turn into admissions, like perspectives. It's just kind of like family and friends of our current family and friends that end up just liking and kind of sharing, but it's too broad in my mind, even when you do targeted for like zip codes, for example. But I mean, Google Ads is by far, like when Yelp comes and asks me if I want to advertise with them, and they're like, hey, this is how many people you could, get to, click on your ads. And I'm like, well, that's like pittance compared to what Google gives me, and Google tells me how many calls I get. And as long as I capture it correctly, I see all of these like social media and online advertisements, and even in print stuff. It's all part of like one goal, which is getting more people in the building to tour. So for me, it's not just that they saw a Facebook ad, or not just that they saw something that I posted on LinkedIn. It's they saw that, as well as know somebody that's already here or heard about it from a local community person or another school. So when I ask people that sign up for tours, how'd you hear about us? And I give them different options to choose from, and then they can say other. More often than not, it's one of two things, maybe three things. One is a friend. Two is by searching online, and which almost everybody's going to search online via Google. And then third, actually for us, is just drive-bys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So signage outside our building is super important for us too.
Yeah, Phil, I think you bring up a good point because and I know we will be diving into specific budgeting, right? Because I know that's a big reason why we're here is to talk about how much should we be spending, right? And it's a bit relative, but you bring up something interesting, Phil, in terms of what are those platforms that might be producing the best results, especially with those that we could track. Should I do because the follow up question is usually how much should I spend, and should I put it on Google, should I put it on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, somewhere else, and general rule of thumb, not a rule of thumb, but what I've seen, what the data shows is that with events that have a date associated with them, I've typically seen social media does a really good job to get you registrations. Outside of that, if you're, let's say, looking to book tours, let's say throughout the year, they don't necessarily have a date. Maybe they can self-book their own tour. Google, to your point, will do a really great job with that because Google is targeting those that have shown intent, right? They're searching for private schools near me and best schools and whatever it might be. And that's when you show their ad at the point of search intent. And so we call those more bottom of the funnel types of ads, and they work really well. But also to your point, I think not that first attribution is not important, meaning what was that first thing that they saw that got them to, let's say, register? That's becoming a little bit less important, and what's becoming more important is the total volume of placements. So somebody may have clicked that Facebook ad last, and the software might tell you, hey, this person came from Facebook. Or maybe the better way to put it is they clicked the Google ad last, and technically they came from Google. But did that happen after they were flipping through on Instagram and they saw you on Instagram? Then they go check the weather, and then you got a banner ad there as well on weather.com. And they're like, let me go check out this school. And then they go Google you, and then you show up at the top, they click it, and they're like, okay, maybe I'll go register. Now, technically that's attributed to Google, but it's all of those touch points that played an important role.
The only other
And
thing,
go ahead, Tim.
I could say is, you've got ads that let people know you exist. There are ads that let people know you exist and somehow get across something that, draws their interest, defines you in their minds, like Sandy with a Catholic boys' school in a town where there's lots of other great schools around and co-ed Catholic schools. So you got a niche. It's one thing to run a Catholic girls' school. You can make the case pretty easily, but most boys don't want that. So you've got to have family that's got a kid that's willing to do it. Got to think about what makes your school really neat and make the case for why you're going to have plenty of great girls you're going to meet, as well as great people and a great education. Every school's got its own unique thing. But the other thing is, whatever you do, I believe you want to find a way in every way, whether it's through speaker series, events, dog and pony shows, theaters, operas. I mean, we used to do an opera every year. You need to establish credibility with the people who are where you exist. You're trying to tell a story. If you look on YouTube, for example, or on Facebook, the people who develop a lot of followers, they're not just posting interesting media, they're establishing credibility. Like they really know what they're talking about. And that's, in some ways, that's kind of what Clint and I are doing here for his company and for the Montessori Foundation. By the way, I'm a fellow customer of Clint's service. So I'll give a shout out to you too, Clint. I really appreciate what you do for us, and I've worked with a lot of different companies, and we always get the question of, should we spend 20,000 on niche? So
Mhm.
Sandy, I really appreciate what you've described, digital billboards and things like that.
Mm.
So the question is, how do you get your unique message across in a way that entertains people and gets people to want to browse? I mean, I think a lot of stuff these days is going to be YouTube and Instagram. You want a body of stuff that people find and they're delighted. You might do podcasting or V-blogging, which is kind of what we're doing here. But notice what we're doing, and you may not be able to do this, but you might. We're trying to get you to turn on your camera and to engage in a conversation instead of just talking at you. Because the idea of, for us, we create value and credibility by showing you the way we work with people like you and the way we get you helping each other. And that's part of our particular thing. I think you can do a lot of that especially if you work with parents that have young kids. They may or may not be willing to turn on their camera and be recorded, but they may be willing to participate in a live event if it's not recorded, if what they're experiencing is both high quality information and the ability to get real answers to real questions and in a safe place from their minds.
So Tim, real quick, what I wanted to do is to talk about some budgeting. And I have a worksheet I'm going to share with everybody for budgeting, and then we can also hop into some organic social, because it all plays into how do we identify prospective families? Because again, I mentioned this on a previous webcast, so for those that were part of that, some of the conversation might be a repeat. But for a long time, because of how the algorithms work with Facebook and Instagram, is you would make a post, and typically that was for your current followers, and only a certain percentage of your current followers would see that. So therefore, you had to go boost the post, and that's how you would get more people to follow you. But now, how the algorithms have changed, you can, with some strategic things as you're doing your posting, you can reach tons of prospective families, or I should say non-followers of your account, right? So Instagram, Facebook, they want your content to get found, and there's a way to position your content so that if you're going to post, you're going to spend the time anyway. You might as well take a couple actions to give yourself the best shot of not so much going viral, right? But it's, hey, instead of us posting and us reaching only 30 or 40 accounts, and if you look at your analytics, it'll tell you how many accounts you've reached. You can post and potentially reach 1,000 accounts. 90% of them are non-followers, right? So that just gives you more touch points. So we'll talk about that here in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see that? This Google Sheet?
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so what I wanted to, I'm going to share this with you. And when you start having the conversation of how much should I spend on ads, right? Should I spend $500 or 1,000 or 2,000? Really what you're asking is, how much should I spend on ads to get the results that I'm hoping I get, right? So you have to think about, let's start reverse engineering. What are those results? Let's use open house as our example, just to keep things consistent. We want to get open house registrants. I know the answer is probably, well, how many? It's, well, as many as possible. Well, let's start thinking realistically, right? Do we need 10? Do we need 20? Do we need 50, like that one school had said? Okay, how much is it going to cost you to do that? And so let's look at, and what I want to do is highlight column B here, because this, and let's stick with Facebook. Same concept is going to apply to Google, just some different numbers. But what I'm going to do is share with you industry benchmark data, that if you were to just get some benchmark numbers, what would that result in? And so let's say you have $1,000 to spend on this campaign. What is $1,000 going it's going to get you. And why does that say 556? That is not correct. Hold on. Hold on. There we go. Now it's correct. You spend $1,000. Now, the average cost per click on Facebook is technically $1.80. I actually think that's kind of high. If I was getting $1.80, I think that's a little bit high. Does anybody know what your own cost per click numbers are? What your averages are? Feel free to toss it in. If you don't know, no big deal. But you can judge yourself off of that. I would usually like to say $1 is a better benchmark. So if you're under $1, you're doing pretty well. So if you spend $1,000, that would get you about 556 clicks, assuming a 1% click-through rate. Again, 1% is a decent benchmark, right? If you're at 2%, 3%, that means you're doing really well. If you're below that, you're probably we probably need to fix something, and we'll talk about how do you fix things. Then it's okay, you've spent money, you've got to click. Somebody went over to your registration page to register for your event. What is the conversion rate? So we get 100 people to go to your page. How many of those are registering for the event? Is it 5, 10, right? So we want to get a conversion rate. A 1% is actually kind of low. I would say 2% is probably more appropriate. And so in this case, if you were to spend $1,000 at the average $1.80 cost per click, at a 1% click-through rate, and about a 2% conversion rate, you should get 11 registrants with that budget. And then so you would have to say to yourself, is that enough, right? Oh yeah, we'd be happy with that. Now, that's one question you would ask. The other question to really ask is, well, how do we get more, right? How do we get more? And so what are some ways to get more? Who wants to shout out or type in the chat? If you said, look, my budget's $1,000, like one answer is, well, just spend more, obviously. If you double it to a $2,000 budget, you'll get more. Let's put that aside, assuming that's the obvious answer, because you can always say that. Doing that in practice with your budget is another story. So if you're stuck at our budget's $1,000, we can't increase it. How could we get more than 11 conversions? What are some levers that we can pull?
Could I diversify with A/B testing on ads?
So you said specifically with ads, right? So what would you A/B test?
I mean, if you're looking for increase, you would probably do some A/B testing on multiple different ads, and then the highest performing one, after the first few days, you'd switch to just primarily focusing on that one ad.
Yep. Yeah, so that's 100%. I would do that. Now, I actually talked about this exact thing yesterday on our coaching session, which is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see schools make with their social media advertising and Google advertising, is that they treat it like a billboard, right? I'm not saying anybody's doing that, but that is definitely a common thing that I see and what I mean by that is you run one image with one message, you see if that works. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, okay, now you got to switch that out. But time has gone by, right? And you're doing a lot of manual adjusting. So Phil, to your point, you can, what we like to do is have at any given time 30 to 40 ad variations out there of different images, different videos, different messages, different angles, right? One angle could be about, hey, are you looking for a school that helps your child pursue entrepreneurship? Are you looking for a school that's small by design? Are you looking for a school that preps your child for college, right? Think about those top 3, 4, 5 things that make your school really unique, why families choose you. Each one of those is an angle. And frankly, you probably don't even know off the bat what's going to be that thing, that angle that actually gets somebody to stop and click. But Phil, to your point, let the data tell you that, right? Don't make an assumption. Let the data tell you. And so, yeah, so if you want to lower cost per click, right? If we could lower that to, right? So if we keep everything the same and we go from $1.80 to $1.20, not a drastic, that's just making probably just some good decisions about, hey, this image is working, they're not. So you went from $1.80 to $1.20. We went from, so let's take a look at the 17 number. Let's go back to $1.80. So $1.80 produces 11 conversions. If we can do that A/B testing, which should help us reduce our costs, that can get you 6 more registrants, right? Now we're talking. Now your cost per conversion is $60. It went from $90 to $60. Right now, what will probably also happen is your click-through rate will go up, right? So this isn't an exact science here, because if you lower your costs, likely your click-through rate is going up as well. So you'll have a dual effect. So that's a great one. What's one other way that we can improve our results even more?
I would think of placing the ads in different resources at the same time.
So when you say place the ads to different resources, are you saying different channels? Good. So that goes into that, and that goes into that omni-channel concept. Multiple. In general, I've seen when you use multiple channels, that will usually produce better results than, hey, if I'm just advertising on Facebook or just on Google. But even as we just look at this, the numbers, let's just stick with Facebook, right? Let's look at our Facebook numbers. We're advertising on Facebook. We're doing some A/B testing with the ads. Okay, we honed in on some ads that are doing really well. What's another lever that we can pull to increase our results even more? I'm not sure how difficult or easy this is to see in here. Here we go. That might be better. And we'll just focus on this column. Because the other ones are just all of these, everything is essentially the same except for, hey, let's put in some different ad spend numbers and play around with it more. So we can focus our time just on the benchmark data.
So Clint, your question is, what can you do if you're trying to get a higher rate of return on the same ad spend, right?
Correct.
The only thing I would say that comes to my mind is I think most ads don't work because a couple of people are sitting around an office and they're coming up with the same old messages and images. What I would do is not just do A/B testing, I would do charretting. I'd gather people together in focus groups. And you can do all kinds of things, surveys, whatever, but generally when you get people in a group, you give them a little wine, you feed them well, you get them excited, you're recording the whole thing, you get them talking about what do you love about the school. You start getting all kinds of really good messages, and then you let AI help you sort out what are the key things that you heard in this recording, and you come up with some new ideas. You start running that out there, see how it works.
Yeah, and I actually think that has to be really the starting point, right? Like the messaging is so important that, and I actually think that's more important nowadays with advertising than ever before, because with AI, with machine learning, one of the things you used to have to really pay an agency a lot of money to do, and you have to spend a lot of time, was doing audience testing, right? How do I make sure my ads are getting in front of the right people? There's still some things you want to do there, but frankly, with how smart Google and Facebook and these algorithms are, they'll find your audience for you. Generally, they'll get it in front of the right people. It's when it's in front of the right people, what's the messaging that's going to get them to click, right? And so messaging is the most important.
Other thing
Then
from my experience is what most schools do is they talk only to their current teachers, their current administrators, and their current parents, maybe past parents. And that's all good. I would definitely do that. But you really have to ask, who are you trying to get? In other words, what's your ideal parent look like? We did that in the first couple of sessions of this series where we talked about how do you find your perfect audience, but trying to get outside of the box and not just thinking about who comes to your school now, because you may or may not have the population that is your ideal population. So it's not just how much money they make and what their average age is and their age of their kids and their income, zip codes. It could be a whole bunch of stuff, including, what motivates them and what kind of messages would get their attention, get them to focus on you.
Yeah. And so real quick, one other thing I'll add to this, just for time's sake, is I'll just mention one other lever that we can also pull is the conversion rate. The page that you send them to, right? So if the average conversion rate's at about 2%, well, what if we get that to 3%, right? Not a drastic increase. We get to 3%, that actually probably has the biggest compounding effect. That's actually typically where after you start running ads and everything's going along, I always try to look at conversion rate and see if you can prove that. So if we have a 2% conversion rate, that's 17 registrants at $60 cost per registrant. If we could just improve that 1% to 2 to 3%, now you're at 25. It's a big deal, right? So now if you get your perfect messaging, you do your A/B testing, you've lowered your costs, you've built a landing page, right, that gets the conversion rate up. That's how you can see the best results. And then you can start again, reverse engineering. So now the question becomes, how much should we spend, right? How much should we spend? Well, you probably have to start somewhere, but you want to start figuring out this number. What is the cost per conversion? And then you can start reverse engineering saying, okay, if I know we've got this nailed, we're getting $40 cost per open house registrant through Facebook. Right now, we want to do the same thing with Google. So Google it's the same concept. You're going to have higher costs typically on a cost per click basis. You should typically see higher conversion rates, but you could still do the same exercise. But let's just say we know it's $40. Okay, if I need to get 20 registrants, if I say, look, I would love to get 20 more from our ads, so how much is it going to cost us? Well, it'll cost you probably $800 minimum. Now you might want to have a little more wiggle room in there, but hey, we're going to need to at least spend $80 in the next 30 days or $800 in the next 30 days to get 20 registrants. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
In terms of how much we should start budgeting?
I think a couple of quick things that are worth kicking in here. The first is if you're into fundraising, a capital campaign begins with what we're talking about right here. In other words, this is the first opportunity to make a relationship with somebody. And there's a lot of steps before you get the $1 million gift, but investing really counts. The second is go to the SBA or Google, what's the normal percentage that businesses spend on marketing every year? And you're going to normally come up with something between 10 and 30% of their gross sales will go into marketing. And most private schools don't spend even 10%. And wonder why sometimes we struggle. The other is if you happen to be in an area where you have an abundance of riches, like I used to be in Washington, D.C., and in those days, there weren't that many private schools and people really wanted to be in private schools. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. But I think you've got to work hard for it. And that's part of our goal is to, really put some serious energy into it. And everything you do, from literally having ponies and a petting zoo and a little model train and, billboards and all the things that we could possibly do, they're all good. Have Steph Curry come to visit your school or, whatever you do. You never know all the different things that are working, but you do want to be investing time and energy and resource. And part of it is almost certainly going to have to be paid for. It's either in your time or and your salary, or it's paid somebody is designing really great graphics and videos and whatever, and you're spending on NPR, sponsoring morning drive on the morning edition or All Things Considered, if you think the afternoon crowd. However you do it, there's so many ways, and you never know all the different things, how they're coming together to get that phone to ring or to get those clicks to come in.
Before we pivot real quick, because I do want to talk a little bit about organic, any questions on advertising, either on budgeting or different channels and placements?
I do see that we had someone join us just a minute ago. So Sandy Zaradnik, you'll be able to see the recording of this, and that may make more sense. We've been talking about how you spend money and what it leads to in terms of actual sales. Clint, back to you.
Cool. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll do a quick pivot to organic. To just your posting on your normal feed on Facebook and Instagram, and then we'll certainly have some time for questions, because again, I had the question the other day was, as we were talking about events and admission events. Hey, we're posting on Facebook and Instagram, but the posts aren't doing well. And by doing well, I assume that just means you're not really getting a lot of engagement. If you're looking at your analytics, you should typically see how many accounts you've been able to reach with. There's two pieces of information that I think this is good to keep an eye on. When you create a post, it's how many accounts did you reach and how many of those were followers versus non-followers. And as I mentioned, now more than ever, you can reach non-followers. So your social media doesn't just have to be content for your existing families and existing followers. You can create content about that admission event for prospective families. But if you're going to do it, I'll just jump right to the point. Creating a static image post typically won't get the job done anymore. If you create a static image post right now, it will reach about 5% of your followers. You will then have to, put some money behind it if you want to boost it. Not a problem. I would recommend boosting it. There's no reason not to. Boosting, there's some things you can do there. Hey, run this to friends of my followers too, right? You can do things like that. But you actually don't necessarily need the boost, especially if you want to reach non-followers. So have this little playbook that I will share with you. I think this probably applies a little bit more. Actually, this is the advertising playbook. Hold on. I got the wrong. That is the wrong file. Hold on. I promise you I have the right one. Give me 1 second. There it is. There it is. The social media algorithm. Let's pull that. That's the one I wanted. Right. So this is specifically, a lot to do on Instagram. It still works on Facebook, but Instagram, I've seen it work a little bit better. Let me zoom in. So I'm just going to give you a checklist of some things to do. If you were with us a couple sessions ago, I talked about this a little bit more when we were talking more about social media. But I think, again, it's important to reiterate to obviously many of you weren't as part of that. So, I want to talk about this. And so here's what I would do. And let's start with this. Let's start at the bottom and we're going to work our way up. Final tips. We'll make these our first tips. Your photos, it's going to be the lowest account reach. So maybe you create an image for your open house. Hey, come to our open house on October 8th at 6:30. That's not going to reach many people. The next type of post that you could create is a carousel. And carousels are pretty good. They'll reach more people than a photo will. And what I've seen, is about if you reach 200 people, with that carousel, 60-40, 50-50 type of split between followers and non-followers. So you'll start to reach more prospective families potentially. But really the name of the game, as you can see there, is reels. Produce reels. Now I'll give you a couple tips on how to do that I've seen work really well. But reels it's what's being pushed by these algorithms and these social media platforms. It gets you on the explore pages so that somebody can find you that way. But a couple tips are, and I think I have it in here as well, but let me just write them down here just as I'm thinking about them to make this real simple. So with reels, of course it goes to another screen. Here we go. So with reels, number one, use trending audio. Right now, the audio has to make sense, right? It has to make sense for the brand. There's probably some audio you don't want to use. So, be deliberate about the audio that you're going to pick. But essentially, like Instagram, for example, even Facebook, they're telling you what's trending right now. Use it. Don't overthink it. Right? So use their trending audio. Two, use trending templates. So if you go into Instagram, and you want to go create a reel, it's going to have recommended templates. Use those, right? Pick one that makes sense and use it. Now you might say, well, what are we going to put? Let's say we want to promote an open house. What are we going to make a reel out of an open house? I'll get to that in a second. But use the trending audio, use the trending template. Now let's say you have a static image. Let me see if I have an image just sitting around over here. Let me see what kind of pad we can pull in real quick.
By the way, I think you may have just come up with next week's topic, because not
What-
everyone knows how to do this.
That's right.
Yeah, so we can talk about that. Yeah, so here we go. Let me just pull a static image over. This is a school that's actually running some they're using this for their open house ads, right? So they're just using some different variations. But let's say you wanted to just post this on social media as is. With an ad, this will do well, probably, these variations. As an organic post, this won't do well. So what you can do is, I don't know how easy it'll be for me to do. Let's try to do this really quick. Let's get an element. Let's get a video of school, right? So let's see what we got here. All right, here's a video of a school. You wouldn't do this. I would probably try to find like a video of your school, maybe like drone footage or something like that of campus. And then let's take all of
For the
this.
record, you're in Canva.
Yep, I'm in Canva. That didn't work out very well. But here's what I'm going for. I'm taking the image and I'm putting it over top of a video. And now what I've done is I've just created a reel out of a static image, very simply. So this was a terrible example because I didn't realize this was going to be transparent. Let's see. Something like this. I would take this, right? You could do something like this and like come to the open house. Probably going to make something a whole lot better than this. Let's make this a little bit transparent, right? So that my point is, you're going to take your text for the open house, put it over top of a video, and now you kind of hacked your way into creating a reel. Put some audio behind that. And so that's typically what I would do to create a reel. And again, you can also just use the templates that they give you, right? So they might give you templates that says, okay, insert your video here, insert your text, or insert your image. Follow those rules. Just think about, okay, how can I turn this static image for our open house, and how can I use an Instagram template? And so when we have a little bit more time, and maybe we do this next week, we actually go through the mechanics of, let's go create an open house reel. Let's go create these things. So that's my first thing, is that if you just do this, you will reach more people than if you just created this static post. Then, here's some other things that you can do. If you're going to post right now, don't wait 15 minutes. For the next 15 minutes, go and engage with other accounts that make sense in your area. Maybe there's a realtor that you have a good relationship with, who has got a couple thousand followers. They follow you, you follow them. Go look at what they posted recently. Go like and maybe comment, or just go like it. go find another local business, go find another school, maybe a feeder school, whatever. Go start engaging with those other accounts. You can comment, you can like their stuff. What you're essentially doing with the algorithm is kind of priming it to get ready, that you're warming it up, if you will. Might sound weird to say that, but it's like you're priming the algorithm. And then also, if other people see that you're liking and commenting, they might start just naturally going to your school account. So that's part of that priming, where now if they're going to your account and then you post a reel, you're creating a higher likelihood that now they're going to engage with that. And you create the traction with your content. Does that make sense? Hopefully I'm describing that properly. So before, try to engage with a few accounts, create. So when we say create reach content, this is what I was just talking about. Create your reels. And then, there's some SEO. There's actually SEO now with social media, where you could have a keyword like in your caption. Let's say, are you looking for a private school in Sarasota? Come to our upcoming open house. So private school in Sarasota is a keyword. And so you could think about trying to incorporate that into your caption using words like private school, high school, things like that, right? So that helps. Let me see if I have anything else here. After posting, certainly if anybody comments, 100% make sure you reply back to them. Even if somebody says, oh, we love this school, or this looks great, oh, thank you so much. Simple things like that. It helps continue for that reel, that post, to continue to get seen and have more traction. So engaging, interacting. We actually recommend that you like and save your own post, right? So you maybe do that from your own personal account too. Like it, save it. And that's starting to boost your engagement. So I will share this with you all as we come up on the hour so that you have it. Just some best practices, like, look, if you're going to post anyway, take an extra 15 minutes, do a couple of these actions, and you should, take a look at your analytics, right? That doesn't mean every reel that you post is going to explode, but some will do better than others, but you're going to give yourself the best opportunity at reaching not just hundreds of people, thousands of people. There's actually a school in Jacksonville, they shared with me, they used a trending audio, they had a kid create this post. They reached over 500,000 accounts. Like, they got 500,000 likes. It was crazy. I don't expect anybody to go viral. I don't think they expected that to happen. But if you follow that, you can actually give yourself an opportunity to go a little bit viral if you create a reel, if you use trending audio, and you use trending templates. So that's it. That's all I have
That's
on that
great.
side.
So next week, you're gonna give people a basic lesson how to do this?
Yeah, let me think about I think that might be a good way to do it. Let me think about the best way to show, like, posting on Instagram, especially because you typically will have to do it from your mobile, because doing it on desktop, you don't get as many options. So let me think. I'll see what's the best way to actually create this content, and then let's plan on doing that, and I'll let you know if for some reason we can't. But yeah, let's plan on doing that.
That's great.
Well, look,
Well,
I'll just put this in the chat real quick for everybody. If anybody's interested, like, if you're looking at your advertising and you want to get some insights about, hey, how are we doing? How do we compare versus our competitors? How's our website doing? How's our conversion rates? We have a snapshot report where if you just put in your information, we'll build out a report for you based upon, your URL and your social media presence, and we'll share that report with you. And then you'll know exactly, hey, here's areas where we're strong, here's areas where we might have some gaps, and we'll deliver that report to you. Yep, Amy, we have the recordings. You'll get the recording sent to you afterwards.
and Amy, if you go to YouTube and you look up the word Montessori Foundation, that's our YouTube account, and we've got a whole playlist of these recordings. So we've now done, I believe, 8 or 9 of them. And as we keep going, You'll see them. If you're also a school administrator, you'll see there's another webcast on Wednesdays that you can also attend, or have the right person from your school attend.
And Tim, we should absolutely mention, like, especially when it comes to helping with schools one-on-one with their messaging. And I know that's one of the areas that I love, that when you talk about that messaging, like talk about how yourself, Montessori Foundation, how you work with schools in those areas and others.
Yeah, again, we specialize in Montessori schools, but we understand all too well what it's like to run a Jewish day school, a Catholic school, a school for children with special needs. It's really variations in the same problem. Love working with schools and happy to help.
Awesome.
Well, anyone have anything they want to ask or say before we sign off?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Please.
If we have an event, let's say at the end of the month, how far time-wise in advance should we start reels and advertising?
I personally,
That's a great question.
I personally would say about 4 weeks in advance. 2 weeks is the minimum to think you're going to get anywhere with most people, but 4 weeks is not an unreasonable time frame.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 30. I usually recommend 30 days run-up time for the event, especially with advertising. Right now, with organic posts, you probably want to do like one a week or something like that. Right, just keep it visible, and then leading up to the event, probably be a little bit more frequent. But especially when it comes to advertising, 30 days run-up time is a good way to start, because understand that, especially if you're just, let's say you're not running ads right now, and you just start running ads for your event at the end of October, beginning of November. How those algorithms work is the first 7 days or so are kind of like a learning period. Who's responding to your ads, which images, what's getting the best results, and the platform will start delivering your ads, or the best performing ads, based upon the engagement and the metrics. So you want to have some time there to have that learning period, make adjustments if you need to make adjustments. Now, typically your registrations are usually they're going to come in towards those last 2 weeks or last week. You might still get a few 3-4 weeks out, but it's a combination of, you want to give the platforms time to actually optimize.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Glad to help. Anyone else?
I was just going to add a helpful tip for organic on social media posts. And that is, we all have hopefully a significant number of folks who work with us that also have social media accounts that we can rely on. Particularly, people, teachers, their family and friends should know that they work for the school. And I'm constantly telling my teachers at the beginning of the year, if you see a post from the school on social media, like it. If you like a post, share it or save it to help the algorithm have a larger reach than just our immediate contacts.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a great point.
Yeah. Bill, that is such basic common sense, and we need to be reminded of again and again and again to help our teachers and our parents do that. Just keep the word going out. The other thing is, again, every one of us has something special that we do. Phil, if I remember correctly, isn't your school the one that works with children with dyslexia?
No.
No. Well, bottom line is we all do something special. And if you were a school with dyslexia, you want to become known as a support system for families with dyslexia. If you're Montessori schools, you want to not only talk about Montessori, which every other Montessori school does, but you want to talk about what it's like to parent young children, or what you can do in your home, or the best things in our city that you could go to. So in other words, if you start looking at what you see on YouTube, and remember that YouTube and Instagram are pretty closely aligned, even though on YouTube you tend to see longer things. The bottom line is whatever works for you. You want to just throw things out there until you are so inundated with great families that want to come to your school that you just can't deal with it anymore. That's when you want to keep pushing even harder, I would argue. You can never have too many families who want into your school. Well, anyone else? Then I guess that we ought to say we'll start on time, end on time. We're a little over time. Clint, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us. And Tim, yeah, stay safe. Hope everybody, does okay, with the hurricane coming. And yeah, we'll stay connected, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week, next Tuesday, same time, same place.
Wish everyone all the best.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.